Happy Saturday, everybody, and welcome to another handsome episode of your favorite Mad Men podcast, Made Man, where today I just finished watching episode 2 of season 7, A Day's Work. But before we get any further, why don't we hear from today's sponsor? Oh, what a wonderful sponsor this was. Now, this episode, A Day's Work. I believe the episode took place all in one day, all on Valentine's Day, and it opens up with our favorite Valentine, all alone in bed, Mr. Donald Draper. His alarm goes off, and, now that I think about it, it really wasn't one morning, right? This couldn't have been all one day. This had to be 2 days, right? Yeah, there's no way this all took place in one day. It took place, okay. The main part of it took place in one day. The beginning took place kind of like in a half a day. Really, it was just Don Draper waking up at noon. His alarm clock went off, but his alarm was actually set for 12:34. Was it 12:34 or something like that? I feel like that's a number I see all the time on clocks, 12:34. So it's like, if he didn't set his alarm, would he sleep all day? Megan's off in California. He's on leave from the company, and he's just kind of like doing nothing. He stays in his T-shirt most of the day. He looks through trade magazines, looking at advertisements. He drinks, and he's marking his bottle to see how much he's drinking. He's watching The Little Rascals. But then at one point, he gets all done up, cleans up the house, gets a suit and tie on, just so when he gets a knock on the door, he lets in Dawn, his secretary, the other Dawn. And she is still assigned to him because he's technically still an employee. So she answers his calls. She gets his mails, his correspondence. But it looks like she's also getting him information. And that she's getting, he's trying to give her a little money. She doesn't want to take it, but he's basically pushing it on her, saying thank you because she's doing a little extra out of the kindness of her heart because she feels comfortable doing it because she likes Don. She's getting him information on just different clients, different people in the office, different accounts, and it's like it's nice to see that he still has an interest. He still has a leg in the game. That's not a saying, is it? I don't know. But he gets all done up, turns his TV off, answers the door, talks to her for a few minutes. She leaves, and he's like, oh, okay, that's it. Loosens his tie, puts the TV back on, back to doing nothing again because he has nothing to do. But his daughter, on the other hand, she has something to do because, I don't know, that's a weird thing to say. She has something to do because her friend's mother died. That's right. I'm not sure if this is the girl that we saw when she first visited the house. I don't think we've ever seen Sally's roommate, have we? I don't think so. So Sally's hanging out with some girls from school. What are they doing? They're trying to be cool, so they're smoking. And they're talking about their friend's mother who died, and they have to go to the funeral and blah 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 blah. And Sally had a great line because the girl was like, she doesn't have to come back to work till Easter, and she's like, I'd stay here till 1975 if I could put Betty in the ground, which was callous because that's her mother, but just I loved it because I love Sally. I love the independent young woman she's become. Like, she's really Bobby's this cute little kid. And at one point, Sally was just a little kid too. But she's really a full character. And you see a lot of that in this episode. And you see the disdain she has for her father. Excuse me. But you also see the sympathy and love she has for her father. And all kind of comes through in this episode. You see sometimes she's still, when she's with her friends, she feels like, not a grown-up, but she feels more mature. She tries to act more mature in front of them, smoking and all this stuff. When she's with her dad, you see her feeling a little more vulnerable, but bolder. And when she goes into the office later, that's where she feels like a little kid to me. So really, like, this is the day before Valentine's Day, and we cut over to Pete, and Pete is with his realtor woman that he's been having a relationship with out in the left coast. They're in the office. Pete's all excited because he got some kind of client. It's something to do with GM, but it's like it's not directly related to Chevy in Detroit, but it is somehow related. I don't know. I followed it only so much as I could. Me, not all that smart, but he's with his realtor girlfriend in there, and they're kissy, and doing more than kissy. Ted walks in, and he actually, they try to be quiet, but he says, "Hi, Bonnie," like he knows she's there. So it was kind of a funny little moment in the LA office. That was really it for the night for February 13th, I'll say, because the next day, February 14th, is Valentine's Day. Now, we didn't know it was Valentine's Day. Nobody knew it was Valentine's Day, and Peggy didn't know it was Valentine's Day. So they get in the elevator, and Peggy makes a comment about, can you get this stuff for me as soon as possible? And Stan's like, it's Friday, I can get it for you Monday. She's like, well, why don't you, I'm going out tonight. She goes, well, why don't you do it, and then you can go out all weekend. And Stan's like, oh, she's going to find out eventually. And she's like, what? You can invite me. What is this? So she thinks they all have plans. But nope, it's Valentine's Day. And Ginsburg says some real crass comment, but that's kind of the relationship the three of them have. I think that, they can kind of say these things to her, and she can deal with it. Or she lets them. She has this relationship with them. But they go into the office, and Peggy sees these flowers on her secretary's desk. And this is like that Three's Company sitcom thing where there's a misunderstanding. And, oh, well, why didn't you say anything? Well, I didn't get a chance to say anything. I've never been in a real-life situation where someone thinks something's happening, and I go, and the person goes, no, there's no time for that. And they're like, well, that's still very much, to me, a television-only thing. And as much as it works in this episode, I was like, man, I don't need to see that misunderstanding stuff. I'm glad when it finally, I hate misunderstandings, and I'm glad when it finally was clarified. Is that? But anyway, it was funny because Peggy thinks these dozen roses are for her, a bouquet of roses. Stan said some funny lines like, I didn't think your cat had the money. And he said some other line that was pretty funny. I forget what it was. But she's all excited about these flowers, and her secretary's like, And she's like annoyed because she thinks Ted sent the flowers. So she's like, you need to tell Ted. I'm going to get Ted on the line. And the secretary's like, okay. She calls Ted's secretary and says, just to let him know, I got the information on the account and I'm not interested, blah, blah, blah. She's trying to use all these pseudonyms about, too bad you've lost the account. Now, later on, Ted makes a line like, they didn't mention which account Peggy lost. So Ted has no idea what they're talking about because, again, the flowers didn't come from Ted. And I just thought that was a funny little thing. We get a moment with Lou. I have to get used to his name. Lou and Roger. Now they're talking to each other. Now Lou and Don and Roger would have much more of a repartee. Is that something where they talk to each other? Lou doesn't have it as much. So Roger says that a woman says a real anti-Semitic comment to him. He's like, maybe it's the hat, which again is also kind of an anti-Semitic, like stereotypical comment, saying maybe the hat made this person think I was Jewish. And Lou was like, he either said weird things happen to you or interesting things happen to you, but that was it. He's like not really into playing. Over in the anyway, back to Sally. She did go. They all went to the funeral, but what they did was they went to the funeral, then they bailed early to go shopping. Now they knew they had time, so they didn't care. They could lie to the school and just say they were at the funeral. But Sally lost her purse. So this is where Sally decides, I've got, like, don't worry about the money. She goes, I have my my address book is in there. Like, all my addresses are in there, which is just funny that, if I lost my wallet, I'm thinking there's my debit cards, there's license, there's credit cards, there's my work ID, there's my train pass. There's all these things that I have to make phone calls on and cancel this and re-up this. And it would be a major, major pain in the buttocks. But for a kid, she's like, I lost my purse. And I'm like, oh no, my address book is in there. Oh, that's it. But as a kid, you think that's like the most important thing. And I've lost my wallet before. It's not fun. Burp. So she heads off from the train to go back into the city. She figured she left it at the store. But we'll get there. We'll get there in a bit. We get a moment with Dawn, and I don't know the secretary's name, but it's the one with the flowers. And they're talking. This is Dawn, the secretary, and Peggy, secretary. Now, these are both black women, so they probably are like, we got to stick together. They talk to each other, and they could probably relate to each other. I don't know. But they just talked about the flowers, and Dawn was all funny about it. She's like, well, it was an honest mistake. Why didn't you say anything? I tried to. I didn't get a chance. You didn't get a chance, Honest mistake. They're her flowers now, which I thought was pretty funny. Dawn just seems like a nice, just like a sweetheart. Like, she's so positive, or at least she puts on that at work, but she seems genuinely sincere. We do see Dawn. Dawn's taking a lunch. Now, this is a weird one. It's kind of, nothing comes of this, but it does plant a seed that Dawn is taking a lunch with a guy from a different firm. He says he's just there for social, but really, why would he do that? He's like, I never do this. Another guy comes up and says, oh, what are you doing here? And they're both talking about, hey, there's always a spot for you with us. And Dawn's like, I have a job. The guy that he had lunch with is like, the word is that you said the wrong things and you cried or whatever, and they asked you to leave, and Don's like, I don't know what you're talking about. So obviously somebody talked about what they saw, whether it was Hershey, and they talked about it at the new place, but word is out about Don Draper. And Don's like, look, I have a job, I have a non-compete, so I'm not here looking for work. But he did take the lunch, which I thought was interesting. Back at the office at this same lunchtime, Sally walks in. I'm like, oh no. Sally walking into things. It's really, really been trouble for Dawn, whether she's walking into the lady doctor's apartment or walking into Sterling, Cooper, and Partners. Because she wanders into what she assumes is Dawn's office and is like, what the hell is this? Who are you? He's like, I'm Mr. Avery or whatever his name is. I don't know what his name is. And she's like, where's my dad? Who's your dad? Donald Draper? He's like, oh, he's not here. Oh, is he at lunch? And I'm not sure what to tell you. He's probably at home. You should probably call him there. And she's like, what? And she's like, is Joan here? Yeah, maybe go talk to Joan. Now, this guy, Lou, took that and got so angry that his secretary wasn't there to answer for this, and was so angry that he had to deal with this. So this tells me that this Lou guy is a piece of shit. Right there, boom, over with. Piece of shit. You are dead to me. When Duck got rid of his dog, nothing. He could never come back. Never come back from that. To me, the way this guy is in this episode, now he seems very laid back and very traditional and very fatherly. Nope, piece of shit, dead to me. I don't care. This is the last season anyway. He's never going to come back and make me like him. We'll get there. But the flower thing. Let's just get the whole flower thing out of the way. So Peggy is like, she's like, you know what? I want you to have the flowers. She says to her secretary. Her secretary is the one who was her flowers in the first place. And the secretary's all happy. Peggy's all pissed off at Ted about the flowers. Then later she sees the flowers again, gets annoyed, and says, you know what? I think we should just throw these flowers away once and for all. And the girl's like, wait. And she tells the truth. These are my flowers. And, these are my flowers. And my fiance sent them to me. And then Peggy got all pissed at her. Why didn't you say anything? I tried to. We see you have a ring on your finger. You don't have to rub it in our face. You're embarrassing to me. And she storms off. Then later she goes to Peggy's office and says, I need my I need a new person on my desk. And Joan's like, why? And so wait, actually, I'm a little out of order here. So we'll get there. But Lou calls Dawn into his office, and he calls Joan in because Joan and Dawn, the secretary, I forget how it was, but Joan came up to say something to Dawn, and no, wait, okay. I'm all over the place, but we'll get there. Let's go back to Sally. Sally ends up going to Dawn's apartment. Dawn comes home and sees Sally's there, and she's like, "What are you doing here?" She goes, "I was looking for you. I went to a funeral. I lost my purse. Where were you?" Dawn's like, "I was at work." She goes, "Oh," even though she knows he wasn't. At the same time, back at the office, Dawn comes back from her lunch break, and Lou starts yelling at her that, "Where the hell were you? I got a call from Draper's daughter, and I have to deal with this." She's like, oh my God, I need to call him. He's like, "You need to call him?" He's like, "What about me?" Again, you're dead to me, buddy. So she gets on the phone, calls Dawn, and says, "Your daughter was here." Dawn's talking to her while Sally's there. He's like, "Oh, okay." So it was one of those things where he knew that Sally knew that he wasn't in the office and that he doesn't have his office anymore. And Sally knows, but Sally doesn't know that Dawn knows. So it's one of those things again that's like, okay, how's Dawn going to play this? Now in the office, Lou yells at her, calls Joan in. Joan's like, "What's going on?" And she's like, "Oh, Sally came by." And Lou calls him in the office and says, "I need a change. I need you to be somewhere else." Now I know we can't fire her. He said, I think he's saying that because she's black and he's being an asshole. He's like, "I know we can't fire her, so just get something else for me." And she's like, "You weren't there." And she said, "Wait a second." And Dawn sticks up for herself, and I loved it. She goes, I skipped my lunch break to get your wife a perfume for her birthday. If you did it 10 days ago, like I told you, then if you remember 10 days ago when I told you, I would have been at my desk. She goes, "Apparently I can say anything I want. I'm not going to get fired," which was awesome. But this ended up like starting this rotating receptionist kind of thing that happened in this episode. So Joan has to deal with these things, right? So she takes the girl from the front desk, and that's the kind of the ditzy one, and says, "Hi, we need to change desks. You're going to go out where I work now." So this girl's taken over for Dawn, and Dawn is going to be at the front desk. And I thought nothing of it until Dawn's at the front desk doing reception, and Bert Cooper walks out. Now, this is terrible and hilarious at the same time. It reminded me of the old Simpsons meme or GIF that you'd see from an old Simpsons episode where Grandpa Simpson walks into a strip bar, sees that Bart is working the front desk, and turns around and without even moving, and leaves the strip bar. Takes his hat off, turns around, puts his hat back on, and leaves. That's a classic moment in The Simpsons, and that's kind of what this was here. So I think Bert was leaving, and he looks over, and he was leaving, and he looks and he sees Dawn at the receptionist, and he smiles, and you can see something is in his head, like, what? And he turns around and goes right back into the office. And at that moment, I thought two things. Number one, Joan was like, "Oh, you don't want her working the desk? Then we'll put her at the front desk. See how you like that?" Because she knows these guys are all jerky racists, or they would have an issue with it. And Bert went right to her office and goes, "I noticed that Dawn was working. We had a change at the front desk reception." She's like, "Yes." He goes, "Well, don't you think we should maybe make a different switch, because people could see her from the elevator?" I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" So he's literally saying, "We have a black girl working the front desk. Someone could see her." And Joan was like, "Oh, what's the problem? Oh, you don't want anyone to you're not changing her because of the color of her skin? Oh, never. I would never say that. So what are you suggesting?" "I'm requesting That's my Bert Cooper. Thank you very much, everybody. And so I don't know. Oh, no, we do see a change. Then Peggy comes in and complains about her secretary. Joan loses her shit. Excuse my language. Joan loses her mind because, she's got to deal with these different secretaries and all these people complaining, and Peggy's complaining for no reason. So Joan's like, why don't you fire her? I can't fire her. She can't say, I can't fire her because it's my fault and I'm embarrassing, and I'm embarrassed like a child. I don't know how it ended up changing, but the end of the story, as far as for me, is oh my God, Jim, right? I've been calling him Harry Hamlin, but I have IMDb pulled up right here. Why don't I just say that Mr. Harry Hamlin, Jim Cutler. I almost said Jim Cutter, so which was close. So Jim comes in to talk about something else. Joan snaps at him, and he goes, I realize you have 2 jobs, don't you? So you do accounts, but you also deal with all the personnel. And he's like, there's an office upstairs, if you're up for it. So he's basically saying you shouldn't be doing this job anymore. You should be doing accounts. And how does that end? Well, she going upstairs with the flowers, and she sees Roger. Roger's like, oh, what are you getting rid of those flowers so quickly? Oh, they're from my son. Thank you, Roger. Roger sent them from Kevin. And he's like, well, what are you doing up here? She goes, I'm taking them into my new office. He's like, you're going to be up here? If that's not a problem. He's like, oh, I guess not. Or I don't think he loved the idea of having her so close, but she got her own. He goes, I do have accounts now. And what does that mean? That means Dawn gets her old office. So she goes into the office, hangs her purse up. They don't say anything. She hangs her purse up, sits at the desk. The phone's ringing. She gets this big grin on her face. So I think she is taking over for Joan's office. I think. That's my guess. That's really the end of that story. The Peggy story, the Dawn story, the receptionist, the secretaries. But the whole thing with Sally and Dawn, that's not over with yet. So Dawn was in the apartment when he knows that Sally knows, and he said, I'll drive you back to school. So they get in the car. But before we do that, let's jump back to California. Not a ton going on here, except that Pete is frustrated. He's frustrated with this job because he's on a conference call, and the conference calls don't work all that great. The technology isn't as good as it is now. He's on this conference call, and they're talking about the new client that he's all excited about that has to deal with Chevy. But they're like, we need to run it by Chevy, and Pete's like, we shouldn't have to do that. And Jim Cutler's like, yes, we do. And Roger was on Pete's side. And then Jim was like, I don't think we should be fighting about this. I thought this was a common sense. And meanwhile, back in California, Pete is fighting for something. Ted is like, don't even bother. Don't even worry about it. The long story short is Roger seemed to end up agreeing with Jim Cutler, ends up calling Pete separately to tell him, look, this is how we're doing it. We're running through this, and we got to get Detroit on board, which means we got to get Bob on board. I think Pete just doesn't want to see Bob, I'm guessing, because it reminds him of his mother, and it also reminds him of the fact that Bob pretty much propositioned him. That's what I guess. That's what I get out of it. He later goes and sees his realtor girlfriend. He wants to sex her right in the open house she's about to do. She actually has some interesting words about, what she has to deal with. And Pete's like, it's completely different. She says, why is it different? I'm in sales as well. And the only difference is, the thing is that our life is in the hands of other people. Our fate is in other people's hands. Sometimes we have to take it, or something like that. And it ends up Pete going into Ted's office, complaining, like, what am I even doing? We have 2 offices here. What am I trying to do? Like, am I trying to work up so that I can get your office someday? Ted's like, you can have my office. And Pete's like, that's not the point. I don't even want to talk to you anymore. Just pretend. He goes, we're not speaking anymore. Just pretend from this point on, just pretend I'm in New York. Pete is just really frustrated, I think, with the fact that he had this, what he thinks is a big whale, and it's being snatched out from under him, being shared with Bob, and he's like, what's the point? I bring in something great, and New York's going to take the credit. And Ted's like, just cash your checks, man. We're all going to die someday. I thought that was kind of a good thing, Pete. That's why Ted's out there to be with his family and work his job, and get away from Peggy. Peggy thinks that she can't. The worst is Peggy thinks he can't stop thinking about me with these flowers. No. Sorry, Peggy. I think that's the end of Pete's story. Like, there was another moment with Roger and Jim Cutler in the elevator at the end of the day, and he's like, oh, we'll have to have that conference call on Monday. Roger's like, no, I called Pete. I got him around to how we were thinking. I changed his mind. He's like, oh, that's good. I'd hate to think that we're adversaries, Roger. I'd really hate that. And I thought, wait, he's not coming on to him, is he? And then I thought, is he kind of subtly threatening him? Which I liked more. I thought maybe he is, because he has this very dismissive, very proper, specific way of talking. But I like the way he does it. He talks like this, and it comes off very, no frills, just 1, 2, 3, 4. And I don't know. I thought that was, I like him. I like his delivery. I like everything he has to say. He just seems so stylish. I don't know what else to say about Jim Cutler. Very stylish. Geez, I think that's the end of that story. So why don't we go over to our main man, Don Draper. Where we last left, Don and Sally are heading back to school. And Sally doesn't want to really talk to him. And but it comes out that he says, I know you're at my office. Why don't you tell me? She's like, I don't have to talk to you. I don't have to tell you anything. He goes, I wish you would. Or she goes, why weren't you there? And he said, he didn't want to say anything at first. He's like, it's complicated. And she's like, let me off. And he goes, just stop. I'm not going to stop the guy. She goes, just stop talking. He says, I'm going to go get gas. Next thing you know, they're in a diner, and he's eating something, and she's not eating. And she doesn't want to eat. But it really, you could kind of see things thaw right here with them. So Don tells the truth. He goes, I know you're at my, I forget exactly where he said, I know you're at my office, but he says to her, I like to say her. He says to her, I know, I said some things that I shouldn't have said at the wrong time. I got the wrong people angry, and they asked me to take a leave. And she says, what did you say? He goes, I told the truth about myself. What did you say? Nothing you don't already know. Boom, boom, boom. He talked about the whorehouse. He talked about that. That was the story he told, being an orphan. And when he says to her, nothing you don't already know, that to me, one line is huge, because it tells me that at the end of that last episode, was it the season finale of 6, when he takes the kids to see the house he grew up in, he told them. I don't know if he told them everything. I don't know. I don't think they know Dick Whitman. I still don't think that. But he did tell them about his upbringing. So I thought that was great. I thought that was just like, he did open up to her. And Sally, I forget, this was in the car. She said, you know how hard it was for me to go to your apartment? What if I ran into her? What if I got in the elevator and I saw her and I had to sit in the elevator with her and smell her hairspray? So that smell is distinct enough that she can still think about it. She went into her apartment, she could smell that woman's hairspray. And of course, her sweaty father mounted on top of her. There was that as well. And I think about, there's certain smells. Like there's a smell that I couldn't say it right now. I couldn't remember exactly what it is, but it reminds me of like when I first started dating my wife. It might have been like a perfume or something, but very specific. And I remember smelling it years later and like going, whoa. And then Aquanet. I don't remember exactly how it smells, but I do remember being a little kid and my mother spraying the hell out of that stuff. I'm sure she like made a small, tiny hole in the ozone layer right above our house. And her perm was, at the time, she doesn't have a perm now, thank God. but at the time her perm was like this, like, I think it could stop bullets. I don't know this for a fact, but I think she sprayed enough Aquanet that it was like wearing a bulletproof fluffy helmet on your head. I think. I don't know. But I'm going off on a tangent. The point is that smell stuck with Sally and makes her think of this woman and makes her think of these things. And Don's like, I'm sorry about that. In the diner, they talked a little more. You know, he opened up to her, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I'm trying to do some work." She goes, "Why don't you go see Megan?" He goes, "Well, I'm trying to fix things here." She's like, "How?" He's like, "I don't know." She's like, "Why don't you just tell Megan you don't want to live in California?" And then she went off to get a phone call to make a phone call and get a Coke to tell her friends where she is. She talked to her friends for a few seconds on the phone. Really not much, like nothing important, I think. But she didn't care about being with them. Like, she kind of got off the phone with them. Went back, and her dad ordered her a patty melt. She didn't want to eat. Then she ate. I think because he opened up to her, she kind of, thawed out a little bit on him. But when she says, "Why don't you just tell Megan you don't want to live in California?" and then goes off to the phone, he kind of has this look in his face like, this kid, she knows what the hell she's talking about. So they get in the car to go home, and they pull up to the school, and he's like, "Do you need a note?" She goes, "No, I have everything I need." And she gets out of the car. She turns to him and says, "Happy Valentine's Day. I love you." And goes off to work. And his look is like, after everything I've done, my daughter still tells me she loves me. You could just see that he was like, it felt awesome, but he also felt like he doesn't deserve it. Earlier in this episode, whether she was talking just to sound cool, Sally said she would stay at school for years if she could guarantee that, if she could get Betty in the ground. She talked about killing off her mother. Her father, who they got divorced, and who probably cheated on her mother, definitely cheated on her stepmother, and has been like distant from her. Left the family early on. Remember, he was in the apartment while they were still living back at the old Draper residence. After all this, she still says to him, "Happy Valentine's Day. I love you." That says how much she cares about her dad. And I said it for years. I love the Sally Dawn relationship. Sometimes it's just it's friendly. Sometimes it's contemptuous. Is that the word? Sometimes it's they're fighting. But either way, I love it. And did I do it? Am I done? I think I did it. I think this is the end of the episode. Yeah, let's see. So Joan got flowers, got annoyed by the receptionist carousel, and ended up getting her own office. Dawn was helping Don Draper. She was helping Lou with his wife. She wasn't there for one thing. Lou got all pissy because Lou's a jerk. And she ended up getting moved to reception, where racist Bert said, "Oh, maybe we could move her." And Joan's like, "Fine, I'm going upstairs. She's taking my job." That's how I think I got out of it. Peggy really just lived the sitcom life today, where she thought flowers were hers and they weren't. She put her foot in her mouth with Ted, but Ted had no idea. And her secretary got all pissed at her, so she's off at some other desk, I think. My guess is she's going to take over for Dawn, for Lou, and that blonde is going right back to the receptionist. That to front desk. That's my guess. What else? Lou's a jerk. Did I say that already? Pete's frustrated with he's got his realtor girlfriend. He's getting clients, but he is not getting the respect or the admiration or the credit he thinks he deserves because he's Pete. And Ted just going through the motions. He has no idea what the hell Peggy's angry about or what Peggy was talking about. I think that's it. Don Draper, still trying to do work. Still keeping up on things, taking lunches. Interesting. but just trying to get his face out there, I suppose. And him and Sally had a moment, you know. It wasn't planned, but sometimes that's how things happen. That's how the relationships are moments in your life. You know, big moments come up, not planned, just because life made it happen that way. So, yeah, I think that's it. I think we did it. Friends, family, you know, I guess a family listening. I want to tell you a little bit about my website, fansnotexperts.com. There's been an awakening. And by that I mean I've redesigned the website. And by that I mean for years, now this is for website nerds only, I used a service called WordPress, which is a blogging tool that you can use to maintain the content of your website. And then I moved it to Blogger, which is the Google's free version, free blog tool. All I did was pay for the web address. But I used that for years. But I'm a WordPress nerd, and I like playing with WordPress, and I figured why not move everything back there. So I did that the other day. So if you go to fansnotexperts.com, you'll see a new website. If you've ever been there before, then you'll notice it looks a little different. The logo's a new color. The website's a new color. The things just look a little different. And you may notice that some things look broken because, again, this just kind of happened within the last couple of days. So I'm building and rebuilding and fixing as we go along. So I hope you check it out. I hope you enjoy it. That's fansnotexperts.com. The website for us specifically is fansnotexperts.com/mademan. You could also find me on Twitter at mademanpod and at Geek Mentality. And if you're on Instagram, check out Geek Mentality on Instagram. That's my Instagram account. And yeah, I think that's it. I think we're done. So, until next weekend, I want to thank you. Thank you for coming along with me on this journey. This journey of 7 seasons. We're here. We're near the end. It's happening. Can you believe it? I told someone on Twitter the other day, I said, you know what? The last episode of Mad Men is not the last episode of Made Man, and that is a fact. Now, he is only, I think, all the way back on like season 2. So it's going to be quite some time until he is heard from again. But someday, oh my God, I lost the tweet. I was all excited to talk about the tweet. Oh, you know what? I'll find it. I'll find it right now. Joe Tuttle on Twitter. He just finished season 2 of the podcast. So this is season 7. So weeks from now, months from now, I don't know. Joe, what's up? Thanks for tweeting. Hopefully Brady's back. All right. Oh, I went back to my regular voice. Wait, okay, now I'm back. I want to thank you for coming along with me in this journey. This journey, as I am really close to doing it, strive to become a made man. Fans not experts.